Okay then, here we go again. It's another wonderful morning, talking to y'all this morning about whatever I've got going on. And I think today I'm going to talk about the importance of communication. And it's kind of like everybody always talks about communication and they're like, good communication, we need to maintain good communication, and all this kind of sappy communication related stuff. And it's true, good communication is needed and necessary in most any facet of life, but I don't know that, like, obviously perfect is a bad example, but even like 90% good communication, I don't know if such a thing realistically even exists, because, like, honestly, there is going to be a natural drop-off between the fact that, like, there's at least two individuals involved in any form of communication. And so there's going to be the natural drop-off from individual to individual. And the more people you add to that equation, the more drop-off or potential, therefore, you have. And so my thought is, like, yes, communication is essential. Yes, it is a very big deal and very important. But it is also something that I don't know will ever be perfect. And I think it is something that we might strive for and try to accomplish, but it is not something that we will ever perfect. And, like, I, for one, am specifically referring to communication in the workplace. And, like, I work in between several different departments, and so there's a lot of intercommunication between us, and I like to think that I have pretty good and strong communication, but there are many instances where I think we're fine about something, and then somebody loses their mind about it, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess we weren't fine. And so just those sorts of things that keep the communication or create barriers in the communication. And, like, can it go away, or is it something that we just have to accept and work with? Like, and everybody always preaches and says, like, communication is key. I believe in strong communication. I need to communicate. And, like, there are people out there that are really good at communicating, and there are people out there that are really bad at communicating. But regardless of where you fall in that camp, there will still be miscommunications and, like, drop-offs in communication. And so it's like, where or how do we adjust to the inevitability of miscommunication? And I think a lot of that stems from just general understanding. You have to understand the intent of the people involved and know that, like, they are doing things to make things better. They aren't doing them to make them any worse. And so with that said, like, we are communicating and doing all of these things for the goal of making things better. And there's a lot to be said about just trusting someone's intentions. If you're like, you know what, I believe that this guy actually does want what's best for us and for the organization or for our goals or for whatever's going on, to just trust that and let them do their thing, like, that means a lot. And you can leave a lot of communication on the table at that point because you have trust. Now, actions without trust means that you just don't believe the system, or anytime someone does something, you assume the worst, or the intentions that you assumed are always bad. And I took this leadership class, which I didn't take much stock into, especially since I've been a leader now for 3 years and they're just now making me take this class. But at any rate, that was one thing that they preached that I do feel like is a pretty good thing to take to heart, and that is assume positive intent. Assume that the individual that you're dealing with had good intentions, and whether they messed up those intentions or the intentions were misconstrued or whatever the situation may be, if you assume that they did it with good intent, then you immediately build some level of trust towards their actions. And now you're just like, okay, well, we've got some trust going our way, so what are we going to do with that? How are we going to make that something that we can then build from and expand upon? And I feel like that is a good foundational method for like building better communication. And then just kind of going from there, like, okay, now we trust each other, and then now let's develop a healthy communication between each other. Like, things will get miscommunicated, communication will drop off, that's inevitable. Nothing, as I already said, is perfect. I do not believe in absolutes. There is no absolute perfect or absolute awful, but we will always fall somewhere in the middle there. And so to understand that and to appreciate that and to see that that is the reality of things is very important. And I think that that would be like step 2 of this. Step 1 for building strong communication is building trust. Like, you've got to trust the other person that you're talking to, believe that they have good intentions, believe that they are out to make things better, and then from there you move on from trust to accepting the fact that like there will be miscommunications and that things aren't going to be perfect, and we're all going to make an effort to learn from these miscommunications and to learn from instances where things could have gone better, and then from there we will move to capitalize on what we've learned, what we've accomplished, what we've done, and get to a better overall place. And so with all that said and considered and all of those things, it is easy possibly to lose sight of whatever else that we have going on. But at the end of the day, I feel like those are like the 2 key important parts of actually maintaining healthy communication. Like, you don't want to just be that statue, robot, cardboard cutout person who literally just continually says, we need to have better communication, better communication, better communication, better communication, and like never actually does anything to understand like what does that even mean. And like that's one of my biggest problems with a lot of people who like are talking about whatever they're talking about. Like, do they even understand what it is they're saying? Like, what is better communication? And like, people consider it childish or whatever when children ask why a million times, but like, to a degree, that bigger question why can reveal a lot of things. And like, this is not directly a why, but understanding what you are saying is going to help you to be able to convey your message better. If someone is standing up and they're preaching better communication, better communication, better communication, and you ask them, like, what does that mean? What does better communication mean? What does it look like? What does that mean to you? And they can't explain it, then how are you expected to be able to adhere to what they want if they don't even know what they want? And it all starts with like looking in, and I say this a lot about myself because I have a really good self-understanding, but since I have developed that better self-understanding, I have been able to look in and understand myself a lot better. And so, and I feel like that goes globally, like understanding oneself and knowing how one works and understanding that is like the key to infinite like emotional wealth. But also another good point in that spectrum is like understanding most anything else. Like there is a good crowd of people who, when you ask them to do something or you want them to do something, they're going to ask you the why behind it all. And that is absolutely fine to want to know why. And but if you can't explain to them why, then you've lost them. And so you need to understand why you're doing things or what you're doing or what you want before you start asking for it. And I feel like a lot of people in the working world will just throw that better communication phrase around, and they don't really know what better communication looks like. They know what they want, which is pretty much to know everything that's going on all the time, every time something happens. But like, is that realistic? Are you ever going to exist in any sort of environment where you always know what's going on all the time, every time? And like, just look exclusively like at yourself. And that should be the one thing that you have the most control over, is yourself. And there are going to be instances where you're feeling a certain way or acting a certain way, and you don't understand why, you don't know why. And so if you can't even understand 100% of yourself, like I would say someone with really strong self-mastery is probably sitting at 88 at any given point in time. But if you can't even understand 100% of yourself and what's going on there, then how can you realistically expect to have that kind of understanding for something outside of yourself, for something like a working environment where there are so many people and factors at play? And like, the reality is, it's just not gonna happen. Like, can we have good communication? Yes, but let's first establish what good communication is. Like, what do we want? You want to be well informed, and you want to know that like what's going on is going on with a purpose, and that there's a good purpose in mind. And that is absolutely, that's good stuff. That's a good start for what we have going on. And so then from there, we need to figure out where or what we have going on from there, essentially. And so, okay, I know what good communication I want. I know what good communication looks like to me, and now I need to figure out how to start moving in that direction. And so like, there's usually key people to any communication chain, and being like, hey, key person A, key person B, make sure that you're letting me know of any big changes you have going on. You're like, okay, cool, yeah, I got you. And then from there, just stay in touch and practice trust, and practice that understanding that things aren't going to be perfect. And if we get to a solid point where we trust each other, we know that things aren't going to be perfect, and we work to establish better communication, we talk about the big points, then I think we will get somewhere very healthy and very good. I'm dealing with communication drop-offs currently, and trying to figure out like how to better that situation, because like, in my mind, the communication that I had established and was going to put in place is fine. And then to other people, they're like, oh, that's not enough. And like, at what point in time is it too much communication versus not enough communication? And so that is kind of the ruffled feathers that we deal with. And it's just a part of it. It's not gonna ever go away. Like I said, we need to accept it. People want to live in this la-la land where it's like communication. We communicate with people all the time. We know what's going on all the time. And I don't know that that's a reality that we can realistically live in and expect to maintain. And so it's like, okay, guys, let's dial it back a bit and be like, okay, where can we realistically go in terms of communication? And what do we need to do to go about getting there? And that, I feel like, is a more fruitful conversation to be had than just mindlessly going on about, well, we need to talk good, we need to talk good. And I feel like that is oftentimes a very common mentality with a lot of things. And I go back to the leadership teachings that my current organization follows, and like, it still continues to like boggle my mind that like, businesses will pay money to just have your philosophies, so to speak. Like, this person is just sharing their philosophies on leadership and how to lead an organization. And I'm sure they have some sort of business plan or program that this business is paying for. And I'm like, guys, like, I can give you an inside philosophy that I feel like is better. Obviously, that's very biased because I came up with the philosophy. Of course I'm going to think it's better. But like, put it to the stress test. Like, apply it to people, apply it to things, and figure out if it survives or if it doesn't survive. And if it doesn't, I will adjust and be like, oh, I did not factor for that when I made this plan. What about X, Y, and Z? And like, people are people. There's very few of them that are so gullible that when you tell them these things, they will wholeheartedly believe it. And a lot of it is like bits and pieces. You get bits and pieces of information and you do with it what you can, and the rest of it you forget about entirely. And like, a big one that stuck with me was like the personalities thing. And they grouped up people into different personality groups. And they're like, you are like person A, or you're person B, or you're person C, or you're person D. And like, I don't truly believe that you can group people into such general boxes. Like, no one, or very few people, I feel like to be able to just fit in a box and be like, yes, I am exactly that person. But to the same end, like, generalizations are important. And it rides a fine line between like generalizing things and like stereotyping. Like, I feel like stereotyping is a very extreme example, but it is a very harmful and realistic example of generalization. And so if you say that like people fall into 4 different camps of people, like, that's generalizing. And a lot of people, like I said, don't respond very well to that, because they're like, yeah, I might feel 1 or 2 things from there, but like 3 things from there and 4 things from there and 5 things from there. Like, you're going to tell me that I'm primarily this because I had 5 things that I agreed with there, but like, I don't want to be put in your box, so to speak. I do not like boxing people into anything. And like, we have to understand that people are individuals, and everybody has their own individual wants, desires, needs in this world, and most of them are very specific to that individual. They are not going to be something that is largely applicable to the entire world. Like, the general concept of things can be applicable to a larger audience, but like, the specific need of that individual is not. And so it's just the generalization of the whole personality thing kind of rubbed me in the wrong way. But I continually go back to this because, like, I really do wonder. I was like, is this something that I can pursue? Is this something that I can do? That I can create my own leadership courses and philosophies and sell it to businesses and travel the world telling people what it's like to be a leader? And, like, how interesting would that be? And, like, is it successful? I don't know. Like, what kind of program do they run? And like, do they have all this stuff bundled up? Do they just like purchase the rights, so to speak, to use your program, and then they use it and you update it or whatever? I don't know. It's interesting. It is very interesting to me how that works, and I want to explore it more. And as much as I want to be successful in a creative realm, I think the reality of things is that like business and more practical creations are probably the easier way to get out there in the world. And like, a lot of people need business, and a lot of businesses exist. Not a lot of people have a need for creativity, and a lot of the people who do already have a good chunk of creativity in their world right now, so they're not necessarily looking for more. And so to stand out in that realm, I think, is rather difficult. Not to say impossible, but like, in some senses, is it better to start out in a business sense and then expand to a more creative model? But anyway, I hope you enjoyed my conversation today about communication, and I hope you make it a good day, and I hope that you got something out of all this talk about communication. And I'm going to go in there and make it a good one, so I hope you do the same.